Hey everybody, what's up? Today is a special day. Today is the 22nd anniversary of the passing of Chuck Schuldiner, the legendary guitarist and frontman of the band Death, who some claim is the godfather of death metal, a title which Chuck himself was not comfortable with, but that's another subject for another time. But anyway, so back in December 13th, 2001, Chuck Schuldiner succumbed to pneumonia and was a complication to the cancer diagnosis that he had. He had an extremely rare brain cancer. So I could do a video about every single album of Death's, and I'm a huge fan of all their albums. And I thought, to try to consolidate Death's career impact, influence, progression as a band is nearly impossible to do without, you could do a mini series on it. So what I decided to do was choose 4 songs from different parts of their catalog from the last 2 live shows that they filmed, being live in Eindhoven and live in LA, Death in LA, Live Raw, or whatever it is. I remember as a kid, I had that on VHS. I remember mentioning it in the Slayer video that I did, but I was a huge Death fan. And the first album of theirs I heard was, I believe it was Spiritual Healing. I had a big Oshkosh Bagosh bag full of cassettes, and there was like Rigor Mortis was in there, King Diamond, Sepultura, like Back and Beneath the Remains and Schizophrenia and stuff like that. And, some SOD and a whole bunch of like stuff that wasn't, Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer. And it happened to have the Spiritual Healing cassette in there, and it looked like the same art that some of the Megadeth albums had. Ed Repka or whatever, who did the album cover for Spiritual Healing, also did some of the Megadeth album covers, I think. And it looked similar. Anyway, I put that cassette in my cassette player, my portable, they used to call them ghetto blasters, portable tape player, and I was immediately blown away. And so I think that listening to Spiritual Healing was kind of like, oh, this is kind of like Slayer, but also kind of like Megadeth too, to a certain degree, because it had some more complicated guitar parts. The guitar solos were melodic because of James Murphy. Even Chuck's playing seemed to be more melodic at that point. So from there, I went backwards. And I got into, what was it? I think I had Scream Bloody Gore, the first one, I think that came out in 1987. And I remember listening to Zombie Ritual every day. And I loved that song, and I loved that album. But it sounded kind of rough. It's kind of like the same thing as Killing Is My Business, where the songs were awesome, but it just sounded really rough. And so after I listened to Scream Bloody Gore, I moved on to Leprosy, and of course pulled the plug. Left to Die. What else is on there? Frickin' Open Casket. I like that snare, that roll in there that was cool, that paradiddle or whatever it was. But anyway, from moving back onward, I moved forward and I got into listening to Symbolic, which was really huge. And I remember writing a paper in school about the album Symbolic, and it was called The Perennial Quest for Perfection. And I was a huge Death fan. And I remember moving backwards into Individual Thought Patterns and how great a record that was. Extremely progressive. It definitely changed death metal. And then I remember hearing Sound of Perseverance. And that album was huge. That it could have been a Controlled Denial album. We know that Chuck was over death pretty much, and he wanted to have clean vocals. He did the Controlled Denied thing, but they wouldn't put the album out because he needed to honor his contract and have one more Death release. I don't remember if that was with Roadrunner or Relapse or whoever their label was at the time, but it's been documented. And I listened to Human. Human was the last Death album that I heard, and it was a huge impact, a huge influence on me. It was really, I would say, one of the first, if not the first, coherent technical death metal album. And I loved it. And Sean Reinert's on that record, Paul Masvidal. Death has had some of the best musicians in it. Ralph Santola, rest in peace. Ralph was a great guitar player, played for Deicide, played for Obituary, countless other people. He was awesome. It's too bad Ralph passed away, as well as Chuck, Scott Clenendon, Sean Reiner. There had been so many great musicians that were in the band Death. I think the first lineup, they had Cam Lee, who did the Massacre thing, Rick Ross, of course, frickin', Bill Andrews, Terry Butler, James Murphy, Steve DiGiorgio, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Shannon Ham, Richard Christie. I mean, I'm trying to recall everybody off the top of my head. And Craigler Cicero filled in for a while. They did the tour thing with Glenn Avalis joined, I think, and they like left Chuck at home. And anyway, it's all out there, and I'm just trying to spitball off the top of my head. But I'm a huge Death fan. I'm just trying to, I guess, drive that point home. But I can't remember all of it because there's been so much. But I decided to choose 4 songs, and we're going to listen to those. And the first song that we're going to listen to is Spirit Crusher. Now, if you haven't heard Spirit Crusher from The Sound of Perseverance, you're doing yourself an injustice, and we're going to right that wrong right now, and we're going to watch it. Here we go, Spirit Crusher, live at LA Raw. You can tell this is probably ripped from a VHS cassette. What a snazzy bass line. Scott Glenendon, rest in peace, man. Awesome. Used to watch this video every day after school. Heavy rotation in my house. Killer highs, man. Snazzy bass once again. Never gets old. Looks like Dave Mustaine's doing security in the front there. Turn the fader up on the solo, man. Front of house guys walking to the next gig. It's really hard not to sing along. Brutal. Just when you thought it was over. Never. How cool is that?
Oh yeah, fuck yeah. LA, what's up? Thank you.
All right. What can you say? I mean, there's so much to unpack there. I mean, Death was a band that changed as time went along. And they got more technical, more complex, heavier to a certain degree, more melodic even. And I mean, I think one way to really show that or reflect that is Chuck's vocals. They started, I mean, Chuck was never like ultra guttural guy, you know, but you know, they were definitely lower, and as time went on, the scream thing became the norm, and it almost had like a more of a notey melodic quality to it, which is really freaking cool. I mean, Symbolic especially was almost, I would dare to say, almost on the verge of clean vocals. The Sound of Perseverance was just a little bit meaner, more visceral, more high end. Like that cover of Painkiller that they did on that album is freaking fantastic. That whole album's good. I don't think Death ever made a bad song, and it was really hard to find 4 tunes. I mean, we could have listened to every single track from every single album, and I would have been content. But at a certain point, it just would have been going, "Yep, this is awesome. Yep, this is awesome. Yep, this is awesome." And I gotta say one thing. Like Richard Christie, awesome drummer, you know, all his projects, Charred Walls of the Damned. I think he did Demons and Wizards with Hansi and the dudes from Iced Earth, the dude from Blind Guardian, the vocalist. But what I saw today was, actually tried to put this in, I was going to put this in this video, was Richard Christie playing drums on Howard Stern. As some of you may not know, that Richard Christie was on the Howard Stern show. And they were going to start a band or something. And Richard played, and I think Howard about had a heart attack. It was hilarious. But Richard Christie, awesome drummer. I mean, Scott Clenendon, I don't know what other project Scott was in, but he did a great job playing bass. He played with a pick, which was cool. It gave Death a different kind of sound, and I think Spirit Crusher reflects that. You know, it's an awesome track. It's progressive. There's timing changes, tempo changes, you know, some complex harmonies going on. It really is a great song. So let's move on. So, of course, the next song is going to be from the Live in Eindhoven, VHS at the time, maybe, or was a DVD. I don't know, it came out in 98, I believe. And these are the last shows that Chuck recorded, I think. But anyway, the next track I chose was Flattening of Emotions. Right, Flattening of Emotions. Yes, from the album Human. And if you look right over my shoulder, right over there, you can see that I have a official tapestry from that album. Great album. I mean, of course, lack of comprehension. And I didn't want to choose like the greatest hit songs. I mean, that could be argued that Death has a lot of those, but these are ones that I thought were different. And Flattening of Emotions got some great guitar playing in it. Awesome drums, of course. This was off of Human with Sean Reinhardt. Steve DiGiorgio. There was another dude that played the bass in the videos. And, of course, Paul Masvidal. Sean and Paul were both from the band Cynic. And, of course, Chuck on guitar and vocals. But on this video, it's the same lineup playing it as Live in LA, which is Richard Christie, Scott Clenendon, Shannon Hamm, and Chuck. All right, so here we go. Here's Flattening of Emotions. Yep, 98. I remember the album fades in. That's right, the song fades in on the album. Outside even. Turn it up just a little bit. Brutal. Man, what great tone out of a Marshall valve state. I think the one that was Chuck's, the last one that he had was on sale on eBay, I think on auction. Love this skull graphic guitar. If anybody knows, whatever happened to Dynamo? Did that turn into another festival? I think it was in the Holland, wasn't it? Awesome alternate picking. Everybody's just in the audience blown away. It's like, one of these. But nobody ever did that to Chuck Schuldiner. But I guess that's a compliment nowadays if people are watching you play like this. Giving you the stink face. Or you're the indifferent. Oh, you messed up right there, Richard Christie is an awesome drummer. Sean Reinhardt, too. Killer. Absolutely awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely awesome. And, shout out to Shannon Hamm. trying to play Paul Masvidal solos. He did a really good job. Paul's a great guitar player, and Cynic's an awesome band, but that's pretty tough to do, and to cover that many albums worth of styles, and you got the crazy, like the pentatonic Whammy Bar Madness of like Rick Ross, and the more melodic stylings of almost like the shrapnelness of James Murphy, then the fusion of the freaking Paul Masvidal, and then Bobby Cobley, who's an amazing guitar player. And Ralph Santola, too, did a great job of playing those other guys' parts. So it takes a lot of skill to walk in and play people's stuff like that. And I think, I'm nailing it 100% is never going to happen no matter who you are, but because you're yourself as a musician, but, nailing the key spots, nailing the coolest moments, and the personal inflections, make it what it is. That's really cool. So shout out to anybody out there who's playing other people's solos and other people's songs live, even cover bands, There's a difference between a cover band and a tribute band, in my opinion. I think a cover band is a group of people that, keep it, 95, 98%. But a tribute band, that shit better be right on the money 100%, from where they breathe in the microphone to where they're, dropping the drumstick, if you will. But anyway, Flattening of Emotions live at Eindhoven. And I don't know, maybe somebody else out there knows them exactly. I mean, I could look it up, but how long was it after Eindhoven or live in LA did Chuck start feeling the effects of the tumor that he had? And, I wonder, I don't remember if I read or watched or whatever, if that was, noted somewhere, documented that he was not feeling well. Because if he was not feeling well at the time, you couldn't tell because he played fantastic and it's ultra killer, ultra awesome. And, Humans, a groundbreaking album, I think that was one of the first technical death metal albums. And I think that, Spiritual Healing was a huge moment for Death, a change in their style where it got more melodic, more progressive, more technical, even heavier to a certain degree. Like Chuck raised the bar. But with Human, I think he went out of his way and maybe had something to prove on that one. And that's what made Human what it is just its ambitiousness. Like there was nothing that they weren't going to do to make it over the top. And for its era and its time, it is. And I guess maybe the one craziest thing about that entire album was Sean Reinert said he was not going to do any blast beats. And if you listen to Death, any Death song, any Death album, you don't hear a blast beat in there. And Sean Reinert, Gene Hoglan's all these guys are more than capable. Gene Hoglan's one of the best drummers of all time as well. The Atomic Clock, On and So Forth, Testament, yada, 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 held the drums together for Slayer's Show No Murder. Was a Haunting the Chapel. He held the kick drums together, taught Dave Lombardo how to do double kick. Gene's a legend in his own right, Anyway, there's another Dark Angel. There's a whole other rabbit hole to go down right there. That's how huge Death was. Is there were so many bands. Like, look at even Autopsy. Chris Reifert was the original drummer, for Death. And Chuck moved to the Bay Area. Watch the Death by Metal DVD now. Some people say that they just glossed over the spiritual healing era, which they did. And Rick Ross, who's an awesome guitar player, awesome songwriter, Death, Massacre, whatever. He was in there a little bit, but all these people are legendary in their own right. And watching, seeing Death to All, what a way to keep the music alive. And I guess, the first couple of tours that they did, or maybe the first one when they had the rotating cast of people, that was freaking awesome. I personally did not get to see that. I wish I had. I saw them the last time they came through, and they had Max Phelps, who does an excellent job doing Chuck's parts, and they had Bobby Cobley playing guitar. Bobby's an amazing guitar player. Dude is definitely one of the most underrated guitar players. I'm sure in the jazz fusion world, he's highly respected and revered, which he should be, but in the metal world, dude's insanely good. He played that stuff like he had a smile on his face, all that stuff like it was nothing. They had Steve DiGiorgio playing bass. Of course, Steve, what can you say? Sadist, Testament, freaking Death, Megadeth. On and on and on and on and on. So all these people are legendary musicians in their own right. So let's move on to the next track. And it's one of my favorites. A death song I don't like. I don't know one. But anyway, we're going to listen to Crystal Mountain, Where Evil Takes Its Form. And this is at Live in Eindhoven again. You know, I was gonna choose the LA one too because I was gonna do the entire live in LA video, but I thought, you know, that's a long time for people to sit here and listen to me talk. So over all the songs and like sing along and everything else. But anyway, let's check it out. Death, Crystal Mountain, live in Eindhoven. It's from the album Symbolic. The audio's a little hotter in this one. I turned it down. Crazy drumming. Richard's back there holding down the fort. That's worth 2 invisible oranges. Look at that old Navy wireless with the antennas in. All right, here comes the cool part. The Van Halen method with the pick holding finger. Awesome lyrics. The look of concentration. It'll be interesting how they end this. I've never actually seen this video. Playing the acoustic part. Now, fun fact, legend has it that if you look in one of these videos from Eindhoven, that you can see Dimebag and Phil watching Death play. And that ties into the whole Death by Metal DVD documentary that talked about, I think Shannon Ham had mentioned that when Pantera took Morbid Angel out on tour, it was actually supposed to be Death. But Chuck was sick and they couldn't make the tour happen. How cool would have that been to see Death play in arenas where they deserve to be? I mean, Pantera was a huge band. I mean, they were on the Billboard charts, all this kind of stuff. But Death getting the recognition that they deserved, and rightfully so. I mean, Death, Chuck Schuldiner, everybody involved in the cast, because it's the machine of Death was bigger than one guy. Yes, Chuck was the driving force behind that band. It was his ideas, but everybody contributed though to that vision. And all those people deserve the utmost respect and praise because they collectively made, in my opinion, probably the strongest catalog in metal. I mean, at least in death metal. Death did not have one bad album, and they had 7 albums. Scream Bloody Gore came out in 1987. That was huge. Leprosy, 1988. I mean, come on. Spiritual Healing, 1990. Human, 1991. Individual Thought Patterns, 93. Symbolic, 95. And The Sound of Perseverance, 1998. And for 1, 2, 3. Chuck there was 2 albums that were one, Scream Bloody Gore to Leprosy was 1 year. Spiritual Healing to Human was 1 year. And it's interesting because those were massive periods of growth. So, talk about, evolving as a musician. And that's one thing that I think that I was influenced by Death and by Chuck was to constantly be evolving, to keep growing as a musician. That was, I think, the main message of all this, in my opinion, from what, the catalog, the legacy of Death, the interviews, the documentaries, everything was that Chuck was a dude that was always trying to do his best. And that is awesome. And he, left this world at, 34 years old. Who knows what there would be now, if it would be all power metal or what it would be. Who knows? I mean, Death may have ceased to exist at a certain point. Death may have died, but Chuck still would have been making music. But, we got one more song to listen to. And to me, this song is the Stairway to Heaven of death metal. And in my opinion, probably the most anthemic of all Death tunes. And that is the classic. I'm sure everybody here knows what it is. But it is what? Pull the Plug. How could you not have this on the greatest hits of Death, and or the Stairway to Heaven of death metal is, in my opinion, Pull the Plug. Live in LA, like I said, I watched this VHS every single day after school as a kid. I remember going to a Tower Records, a real record store. I don't know how many people remember Tower Records, but they were a thing. And I caught that at the tail end of all that because, CDs, digital music platforms like, the Napster thing and LimeWire and all the downloadings, the file transfer stuff or the peer-to-peer file sharing or whatever the hell it was, that had already taken over. So to actually go to a record store was a really cool thing. And I think the last time I went into a record store was 2004, or like a chain record store in a mall. And it was gone the next year. And I remember I got the Dimmu Borgir Live Misanthropy DVD. And that was really cool. It had two discs. And I was super, super stoked on that. I'm a huge Dimmu Borgir fan. Yes, they are the poppiest black metal band of all time, but it's good stuff. And I like Old Man's Child too. So whatever. But anyway, once again, we're going to close this out with Pull the Plug, rightfully so. If you know the words, sing along. That's what Chuck says anyway.
I'll tell you what, we're real low on time. We're going to have to cut out a couple songs. We're going to get
Bummer.
down to the ending.
And I wonder what songs those were. I wonder if this was the same set as Eindhoven.
Scream along, people. This is it. Thank you.
I thought they played a theme like the Charlie's Angels theme right here or something. Oh, some tapping. I remember hearing this for the first time and went, that's not in the song. Huh. Bunch of sweep arpeggios going on. Hell yeah. Tricky riff, man. Brutal. This may be the heaviest riff of all time right here. Definitely one of the top 10 heaviest riffs of all time. Maybe the number one. Shannon making the solo his own. Equally as cool. Shred machine. Changing it up a little bit with the arpeggios at the end. Classic ending right here. Like the Ozzy Ultimate Sin video, he's like, crazy rock and roll ending.
I want to say thank you, people. Keep the metal faith alive. Thank you. Good night.
Death. Keep the metal faith alive, and we are trying our best. You know, I don't know if anybody has seen the Living Monstrosity shows in Florida. They played 2 of them at the Brass Mug, and that was James Murphy, Matt Harvey from Gruesome, Terry Butler from Obituary and Death. And I think Gus Rios from Gruesome. I think he was also in Malevolent Creation at one point, maybe. But anyway, those shows were cool. It was cool to see James back out there after 16 years playing. They played the entire Spiritual Healing album and a couple of the other songs. It was really cool. And I'm happy to say that we're going to have James on the podcast as a guest. And we recorded our podcast, and it was almost 2 hours long, full of all sorts of cool stories, all sorts of cool information from, we spent a lot of time. James gave us a lot of really killer information about the whole Spiritual Healing album, that era, as far as all the other projects that he has done. I mean, we could have talked for, 24 hours and not covered everything, but we tried. And it'd be awesome to have James come back on the show down the road. But he really gave us an insight into that era of the band Death. And shout out to James for doing that. It was awesome. So guys, keep your eyes peeled for that. I think that'll be maybe a couple weeks. I'm gonna do two-part release where the first one will be half, the second release will be the other half. Rick Ross, he's out there doing, that was Living Monstrosity was the one in Florida. My bad. So Living Monstrosity was Gus Rios, Matt Harvey, Terry Butler, and James Murphy. Left to Die is Rick Ross, Matt Harvey, Gus Rios, and Terry Butler. And Left to Die is doing some festivals overseas. I think this coming summer, I thought I saw a flyer somewhere that had them. And they just did a tour, and that's awesome. And they're out playing the stuff from Scream Bloody Gore and out playing the stuff from Leprosy, which is freaking rad. Living Monstrosity, they did the Spiritual Healing album and a couple other songs, and that was cool. Like I said, to see James back out there. He's, coming on the show. We already filmed the interview or the podcast, whatever. But Rick Ross is supposed to be on down the line once he gets a moment. He's a busy guy, and I'm looking forward to that one too, because it's going to be cool to get these legendary dudes' perspective on one of my favorite bands, but one of the biggest bands in death metal history. And what it was like working with Chuck. I asked James one question. I asked him, I said, when you guys took a step back from Spiritual Healing and listened to the masters or were getting the proofs or whatever, where you were in the studio once the vocals had been tracked, did you really, did you hear how influential and how groundbreaking that album was? And I don't remember his answer. I'm not going to tell you because you're going to have to watch the podcast. The first half of that podcast will be, I think, 2 weeks from now. So, keep your eyes peeled for that one, man, because that one's really, really cool. But, Rick will be on the show. And, Death, to me, was not just the music, but it was the integrity of the music. Like, it was stuff that always got better. It always progressed. It always seemed to be, reaching higher. Chuck went away from the gore lyrics and the horror lyrics to more, psychological or realistic themes. Like Chuck had said, there's nothing more terrifying than reality, which is absolutely the truth. In my opinion anyway. But death transcended death metal. And they became, towards the end, especially with Symbolic and The Sound of Perseverance, those two albums, they were almost turning a corner into more like, I dare say, especially The Sound of Perseverance, like power metal. And I mean, you can listen to the Controlled Denied stuff and draw your own conclusions, because that's kind of what that was, almost like power metal, progressive metal kind of stuff. And Individual Thought Patterns too, like that may have been the high watermark for the technical stuff. I mean, I think that in my opinion, I feel that Human is a little more aggressive than Individual Thought Patterns, and I think Spiritual Healing laid the groundwork for that. But I think Individual Thought Patterns was the most progressive album. That one had a lot of really cool, like, fretless bass stuff going on. They had Andy LaRocque in there, King Diamond, he was in there shredding it up. And it was interesting to hear him talk on the Death by Metal DVD about how when he recorded his solos, Chuck would send him just the section of the song that he wanted him to solo over. So when he went to the studio, he just winged it. And, all the solos on that album are great. They had, Craig LaCicero in the band. They had Ralph Santola in the band, all these incredible musicians, Bobby Cobley. And I was, like I said earlier, I was lucky enough to see the last Death to All tour they did with Suffocation. And I can't remember, the other band's escaping me. But, that Death to All show was classic. And I remember the Death to All folks played with Living Monstrosity at the Brass Mug when they did those 2 days. And that was Dirk Van Buren and Steve DiGiorgio, Max Phelps, and Bobby Cobley. And they had a couple other folks come in and out. I can't remember one of the bass dudes. I should remember his name, but I can't. But, I can't remember all this shit. But at any rate, when I knew that there was something up when Dirk Van Buren and Steve DiGiorgio were playing, like they were queuing off each other. And I remember going, man, I bet you Steve DiGiorgio's playing on that new Megadeth record. And I was right. And I remember telling all my friends, I'm like, mark my words. After watching that video, I knew, because they were like, they had, like, obviously these guys are probably all buddies, but like just they were like locked in solid. Like they had, like Steve was ultra familiar with the way that Dirk plays, even though Dirk's playing, Gene, Sean's, and Bill's drum beats. And Richard's drum beats as well, but like you could tell that they were like locked in, like the rhythm section was locked in, and that's an awesome thing when that's going down. But anyway, thank you guys for checking out my channel. Thanks for all the support. I really appreciate it. We got some really cool podcasts coming up. James Murphy 2-parter. I mean, it's almost 2 hours worth of awesome material. We got Rick Ross coming in down the road. This Friday we have Omar Rodriguez from the Metal Mixtape. We got Paul McBride from Vorath stopping by. There's a couple other ones that I'm going to be, filming and everything like that and get them ready. But anyway, guitar videos, hope you guys are digging them. All the lessons. I just put out my 25th lesson video. I've been doing stories about the road. The last tour I did with Possessed, I did a story about the humble Ibanez Tube Screamer. I just did one yesterday about, what was it? About the live in Aschaffenburg and eating a bunch of melatonin gummies, and I got kind of nervous about that. It's funny stories, shit happens. But anyway, thank you guys very much. Stay tuned, lots more comment content coming, and keep commenting. Keep them coming. But my newest original album will be out soon. I hope you guys are going to dig it. I definitely pushed forward in the spirit of Chuck, in the spirit of progression, spirit of technicality, of death metal, progressive metal, reaching higher. But and the musicians that contributed to this record did a fantastic job, and it was awesome to have other people involved. But anyway, lots of stuff coming out on the horizon. I've got 5 shows I'm doing down around NAMM in LA and Southern California. Going to hit San Diego as well. So if you guys are in that area, there's a flyer. The flyer's been posted on my community tab. If you guys get a chance, please follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm slowly but surely building my influence, and I need everybody's help. So thank you guys once again. Take it easy.